I'm Yusuf, and I'm gonna be ranking every area in Silksong. So areas in Silksong all have their very own personality and makes them truly unique. But which area is the best and which area is not as so good and well built? I'm gonna be ranking every area on these three criterias: how creative the enemies and bosses are there in the area, the background and the beauty and the general concept of the area, and how much content there is and reasons to go back to it. And other than that, please subscribe and like, and let's start ranking. So on number 27, you might be surprised, but like, it is the Abyss. It's only making me having nostalgia. And the fact that the name is the Abyss is making it even 27. I may have put the cradle in front of the Abyss, honestly. The enemies are not the most annoying, but honestly, they're just basically no personality. There is personality, but it just feels all black. The Hollow Knight Abyss, there was like skulls everywhere, shaman, just like boring. And an annoying walk when you come back for the final boss. The only thing is the final boss is cool, but like, that is kind of stretching it. And Cradle also had, I mean, I know it was okay. Like, yeah. In Act 2, I loved this area. This area was so pretty and so serene. The music was like, at the time, my favorite soundtrack. And I think the drone enemies and every enemy is super cool. And at first I thought High Halls is my favorite Citadel area. But then once I finished it, there was not much to do and there was no reason to go back here. And then in Act 3, this whole area got pretty ugly and not even that good looking. And then it just all went downhill. Though it has cool moments and the enemies are awesome. Even there's some cool sections like the banking section and the chorus section where the gauntlet is. In all, this area is just sort of meh and just forgotten about. In 25th place is Hunter's March. Hunter's March was such a disappointment. When the first trailers of Silksong came out, I saw Hunter's March, and it was all this bone structures, and I was so excited for Hunter's March, because in Hollow Knight, ants were not there, and then this came. Like, what we got in Hunter's March was nothing what I was expecting for. It was the most disappointment. I'd rather not have this area at all. Farfield was Hunter's March in a way, even the castle, and I don't understand why. Just make Hunter's March or Farfield. Or why don't you just merge Farfield and Hunter's March? Because honestly, this was probably my favorite part traversing it. Even in Act 1, it was impossible. I had so many good experiences just dying by ants because how amazing the warriors are. And in Act 2, there's not much to it. And in Act 3, just Farfield got all the glory. Honestly, could have been way better. Biggest disappointment. And yeah, so next. What is it with every platforming area that there's always a banger of a soundtrack? Like, this soundtrack I can listen for hours and not get bored. Not only that, as it is a platforming area, this area has amazing platforming. But there's also a lot of detail in this area. Like behind you in the footage, you can see that it's a giant clock in the background. It's truly cool. Like, there's so many details you wouldn't notice. Also, after you go here, in Act 3, there's a secret area up here, as I'm showing you in the footage, which is surprising because in Act 3, half of this area is closed off. You wouldn't think there's anything in here. But yes, there is, and I think that's really cool. But also, let's talk about the platforming. The platforming is just seriously rage-inducing. I spent 2 hours straight, constantly dying. I was gonna give up on the game. Once I finally finished the platforming section to get the final singer or the judge of the leaders of the Citadel, I felt so good, and it probably had the best melody of the three. Not only that, once I was finished, I truly feel like I accomplished something, and those hours I spent in Kagura Core was truly special and something I will never forget. And I just don't have any reason to hate this area, but I don't really have any reason to like this area. I just don't like. But even though I have no reason to not like this area, I just don't like this area because I didn't get captured into this area. I had to like get in here by the occult key, apostate key, and the enemies are annoying. The boss is annoying. It's probably the second worst boss in the game, and just everything here is not that fun. I mean, the part where you have to. If you were captured, you had to use the steps to kill the enemies were cool, but yeah, then again, I was not captured, and the first sinner was cool, but the bosses, but yeah, other than that, I can't really give it extra points, so yeah, and nobody likes the prison, by the way, so like, that's also there's that. There's nothing wrong with this area. I think it makes the Wormway feeling amazing, and I think the side quest of the Lifeblood was amazing beyond anything. And if this was in a slightly bigger area, this area would be like 20. This place would be like probably in the 10th place. Honestly, like the enemies are not even that bad. It's not even annoying because you have endless health to get from the enemies that go up and down. And it does have some really interesting looks. It's probably really cool looking. I love the Lifeblood look. It's just the only problem with the Lifeblood is there's these enemies that block the hallway, which is impossible to like kill. And it's really annoying. And the only boss there is horrible. It's probably the worst boss in the game. And to tie it all together, there's just too many of these enemies that block the pathway. And the Lifeblood, even though it looks cool, it makes all the enemies just unbearable. But other than that, perhaps if you're bigger and maybe in the Sea of Sorrow, since there's some speculation it's gonna be a Lifeblood related, maybe they'll make this Wormways a bit bigger and interesting interactions with this guy. So yeah, on to the next one. Coming in 23rd place is Bellheart. Bellheart, I truly think, is it's just so fun. It's fun being in Bellheart. Like, how can you not like being in Bellheart? In Act 3, I really felt sad when the town was broken. Not like Bone Bottom, because Bone Bottom, it really could have been Dirt Mouse. Bone Bottom could have been Dirt Mouse, but in Act 3, they just kind of destroyed everything. So this really became a safe place and a home. And I really like the customizing your own house. It's really something to do. And Bellheart in the Mace Bell section, like, I've never even returned to this part that I'm showing until Act 3, and I've totally forgot of this entire section. Every time I go down into the attic, it's kind of like an attic, honestly, where you forget it exists, but when you go there, you just realize how huge the place really is. And that just shows like a small area, but the way you design it, if you make it into like a really cramped and small, narrow section, it gives the illusion that it's really big. And I always feel like Bellheart, even though on the map it says it's small, it feels bigger than Bone Bottom, honestly. So yeah, and so. Oh. Moss Grotto, the 19th place in my area ranking, and I think Moss Grotto is a great start. Compared to Hollow Knight, the starting of Silksong was amazing. Starting in a bright and easy enemies, but like, make you feel really calm. And at the start, it's actually kind of, the enemies are in fact kind of easier than Hollow Knight, so it makes you feel this false sense of comfort that this game is going to be alright, which, you know, if you play Silksong, you know this game is, like, way harder than Hollow Knight. But, I definitely think Hollow Knight start feels very grim. And I just think it executes it perfectly. But, as a later area, I also think it did really well. One of the great things about this area, it has the Weaveness Atla. Petrified Duck making it at 18th place. You know, you might be surprised. I see most rankings, Petrified Ducks is considered the worst area. I don't know why, because honestly, I feel like the Clear Lake and the Fleas are just awesome. They make Petrified Duck just so fun to be in, and also gives it a lot of returnability, where you can return it to just try this fun game. It's one of the few areas you can just do something other than endlessly going through the wilderness and dying. I just find it enjoyable, and especially in Hollow Knight, there was not even any mini games. Silksong, I love the mini games, and the Flea Caravan is really something to do. And especially and other than the fleas, which were amazing, but it doesn't get me on my nerves. And another thing is the grabbing plant combos a lot with the plant shark. I don't know why. What do you call it? See, like, I just got caught in this footage where I got caught on the vine, and then I was able to get hit by the monster. And as you can see, I'm struggling a lot. And Petrified Ducks is not easy. I think it's enemy-wise, it's way harder than Biowater. It's just too small for you to really, and there's too many benches nearby to really die before you get to a bench. But other than that, the enemy's just cool, honestly. But the real problem is just size. The size is too small, and if it's gonna be this small, honestly, this could be Biowater. I know it looks different right now, but if you do a green shader in the background and the water, it will look exactly like Biowater. And as you can see, a plant ate the fly, and this shows just how many details they are. Anyway. This Sand of Karak, the 17th place of this entire ranking. And this area has amazing platforming, and I like the enemy type. It also holds the Coral Tower. So when I first enter here, the moment the music's hitting, the moment I heard the music, it hit me. The music made me feel old. That I am the only person. It made me feel like I'm alone. I'm the only person in this world. It granted me a deeper feeling. This area silenced any doubt between me that between Silksong and Hollow Knight. After this, beating this area and finding out everything there is in this area, I decided that Silksong was just better than Hollow Knight. And this is not changing my mind. I still love this area. And this is why I'm putting it in the 17th place. I'm not putting it higher because there is better areas. The Sacred Vaults, not only does the Sacred Vaults, it just looks way too similar. All the rooms barely have any personality. It is impossible to walk through it. In Act 3, all the enemies are flying enemies, and they're all so hard to go through. Every single enemy I get hit by. I don't know what it is, but there's the cramped spaces and all these little mutton heads that are so stupid and annoying. And this guy, what is this guy doing? He's annoying. This entire area is annoying, and I like annoying areas. So good job, because barely any area annoys me in this game. The only game, like, I don't even find Biowater that annoying. Like, my worst experience is in Sacred Vault and another area I'll talk about later. But this is not all bad, because I do like the library vibe, and I kind of like libraries. But once you do everything in the Sacred Vaults, and you get the thing, it kind of feels like how you feel if you're in a library and you want to leave, but your mom has work to do, so you have to wait and just sit down and do nothing while you wait for your parents to, like, finish their work. It feels like that. Anyway, Sacred Vaults is not a bad area, but just boring. I don't like it. It's okay. Oh yeah, by the way, there's Trobio. Trobio, the goat, the awesome, the amazing, whatever. Coming in 15th place is Bone Bottom. I think Bone Bottom is a great starting area, though I think it may be a bit too hard for the starter people. But then again, it's okay. It shows how Silksong is really gonna be, especially after Moss Grotto. Like, directly after a green area, you'll immediately go to a desolate, fire, and dark area. The best part of Bone Bottom is probably the dark part, the full of bones. I don't really like the lava part of Bone Bottom because it feels a lot like Deep Docks. So that's why I like the darker part of Bone Bottom, because that part of Bone Bottom truly feels different. The lava section feels a lot like Deep Docks. So anyway, but yeah, great area, and I just feel like it didn't really add anything to Act 3. The Memoriam is a really interesting area where they mix every single area, a natural area that you've seen before, and then put it in one place. It feels like a zoo, and I'm walking through it, looking at the different animals, and that's super fun. Not that it's really scary, but when you are here and you get to look around, it's very mournful, and it reminds you how the Farloom just truly messed up everything, and it makes you want to bring back the life that was once in Farloom. And that's super cool. But of course, it's small, and after you look around and have your full looking at the stuff, you don't really want to come back, and there's not really a reason to come back. So, good job, but you can't be any higher. Sinner's Road! I think Sinner's Road is the most painful, worst, and just horrible. It's worse than Biowater. People, yeah, but nobody talks about Sinner's Road. I have had the most painful, rage-inducing moments through this area. I broke my control. This area made me go insane. But also, the enemies are really annoying. They have all three enemies that are unique here are all super annoying. All of them are just impossible to kill and way too much health, though I do like the chain guy. And the platforming, it's not that the platforming is hard, it's just at the time you don't have double jump, so you can make mistakes. And a mistake makes you lose soul because you land on maggot filled with water. And with maggot filled water, you can't heal. And at the time, you probably have only 5 hearts. And then, round it all up, there's also these dogs that keep chasing you. And then there's no bench, and the nearest bench is in halfway home, so every time you die, you spend like 20 minutes of just walk back. And when you finally find the bench doesn't work, and if you do find how to fix the bench, by the time you're probably already done by Sinner's Road, which I was done with Sinner's Road, and I never used the bench. And so it's useless, and even if you do find the bench early, there's the hardest parkour moments ever so far. And some people have not even got used to the diagonal pogo at this moment. And then there's this boss that shoots maggot-filled balls everywhere. It is everything was so annoying. But also, speaking of the boss is really creative, yet really annoying. Really annoying. Like, I do like him, and I'll give it points for creativity points. I do like the kitchen idea. So I think it's definitely a good boss. Also, in part, at the start of the video, saw that the mist, remnants of the mist. So the mist is actually one giant room that Phantom manipulated to make it look really big. So the mist is actually part of Sinner's Road, which also makes it really high, since the mist was a really interesting Lost Forest, and I really like it. So in all, even though Sinner's Road is probably the most painful experience, and has probably the hardest puzzles, with the most painful boss, oh, just where do I begin with the Benjamin Crawl side quest? Honestly, let's just continue. If I complain about every problem in this area, I could go on for hours. So let's go on to the next area. The Blasted Steps, where everything is super sandy and it's windy. I actually find this area the probably like really epic, and the finale of Act 1. With the sand on my eyes, it's just super cool. And with the sand effects and the enemies, I love the judges and how they are. There's these Omega peasants that are somehow impossible to kill. Like, I don't know what this single Pilgrim is doing, but this guy is super good. But anyway, there's a bunch of breakable walls here, so which is really cool. I mean, it's just something always to find. I bet that you've not found all the breakable walls in the Blasted Steps. And other than that, it does have one of the most annoyingest enemies, which is the drill heads. But I actually never found them that annoying, but you know, at times. I think the worms trying to eat me was really cool, especially that the wormways are under Blasted Steps, which makes sense. and this huge downhill where you can just constantly dive down and eventually make it to the bone bottom is really fun. And not only that, this is also the place where you find your nail arts, which I actually use my nail arts compared to other people that much higher because one, the sand is not really fun to traverse, and it is kind of just broken down and not really a desert. There's no desert section. It's just sand with man-made bridges, which I wish there was some red sand like the Grand Canyon in Arizona. That would be really cool, but nah, it's okay. I'm fine with that. Just Blessed Steps is a good area, but if there was a bit more personality to this area other than just sand, it could have been higher. White Ward. I think White Ward is like the deep nest, or it was deep nest until I realized how small White Ward was. But the moments you are in White Ward is pure terror. Like being in deep nest and your first experience is terrifying. This is even more scary. The music is like you can see the experiments, and if this area was bigger, then the fear level would be so much higher. Because by the time you spend a long time in there and you think you're never gonna get out, and you're actually starting to get scared, the area ends, and then you're back to the light, which is not that scary. But if it was at least an hour more of rooms or content, then the fear will really settle in. Because what made Deepness so scary is that it's impossible to leave Deepness. When you first go to Deepness, you will spend at least 3 hours in Deepness circling, getting lost, being scared. Like, the entire Deepness is a maze that you will never get out of. White Ward is not. It's like a fear roller coaster. It's when you're scared in the middle of it, but then it ends too quickly to be really scared. And that's my thoughts on this area. Farfield! The field with a lot of grass and very far from the Citadel. I don't know. Well, I think Farfield is actually pretty good, you know? Like, Farfield may have those, enemies. They have a lot of cool enemies. The lava section is really cool, but the best part is when in Act 3, where it really expands and it becomes the ant section, and where Hunter's March should have been. Though, I think I had an enjoyable time, and I love these lever things where you can just swing on, and the ants are cool here. So, honestly, even though it is kind of boring, and in Act 1, it is probably one of the most boringest area. In Act 3, I think it makes up for it, and it deserves this high. But out of all of them, for the big areas, it's not the greatest.
Bye-bye.
I love Las Verdania. You might be surprised on how high Las Verdania is, but I don't care. Las Verdania, the moment I went here, I fell in love with this area. This area is so calm, so fun to be in, and so nice. And since you can only be here once, the experience you spend over here in this area is so enjoyable and memorable. Especially in Act 3, you can't really find new areas, and this is one of the areas you do find you can actually explore, and it's just super fun. And I like the memory idea, because doing the memories, it makes the area feel much longer than it really is. And like, there's so many cool enemies, even though that they're annoying, they're so green, and they're just, everyone is awesome. Every enemy is so creative, it's so green, and just so nice to be in. And it is the best looking area in the game, and this is the area I've been talking about. The clovers mix in so well, and everything about this area, and the music. After the music hit, I just knew, like, this area was better than any other area I knew. The only problem with it is it's just too tiny, and it's not an actual area. Like, it's not an actual area you can really explore in. But I don't know. If this was a real area, I would spend at least 10 hours in this area just staying put and just listening and looking around. The background looks so amazing. And that's all I have to say about this area. So, yeah. Underworks is in 9th place, and first of all, let's go. This place has probably the best merchant, and I'm really sad that he died in Act 3. But like, this architect was really good, and I love the items he sold. But not only that, they have a lot of interesting mini areas, like the cauldron. The cauldrons in the lava section with the deep docks, and then with everything. And then this is also where you get the hook shot. It's really cool. And then there's the slave section where there's a bunch of workers working, and it really shows how evil the Citadel is, with forcing people to work with minimal sleeping and barely any wages, which they represent by each enemy give only like $1, which is like less than the peasants have, even though they're much harder. Not only that there's the benches you have to pay money for, which is messed up. And I really like how the place shows a lot of storytelling, even though not like being upfront with it. There's just so many details showing how messed up the Citadel acts. And you know, in Act 1, there's this golden lie where you always think, or like, I always thought the Citadel was this perfect place with golden and everything is perfect and you're just gonna have to fight some rich people. But no, this just shows like how the Citadel is so powerful because they just have free workers. Are you surprised I put Mount Faye this high? Well, I'm not, because I think Mount Faye is the prettiest area in the game. Except one area, which I'll talk about later. But the background looks so good. Like, the background of the area makes it really make this area have the sense of mass and huge, and it's really big. And the thing about Mount Faye is the platforming. Most of Silksong is a lot of combat, so to have an area that's so platforming based is so nice, and I really enjoy the platforming. And even you can come back here and you'll still find new stuff in the area. Mount Faye looks like the best area, honestly, and the climate feels very different than any other area. I love the blue and the Weaver Sands and everything about this. And it also has the sledding down giant sleds. Like, sledding down snow is really cool, and it's really fun just sledding down without pressing any buttons, just Hornet just constantly falling down. And that's just awesome. I love doing that. Also, the giant bird is cool. But yeah, so Mount Faye is this high. Don't shout at me. It's just my opinion, and I think Mount Faye is just cool. Shellwood. I think this Shellwood is probably the most beautiful forest area I've ever seen in a Metroidvania. Though I don't know why. This area just gives me the sense of wonder and that there's still hope in Farloom and nature will still thrive. There's also just a bunch of animals and it feels so vibrant. And that's what I like about this area. Another thing I like about this area is how creative the enemies are. The stick bugs, the shells that break into two different enemies, and I also like, and Nihilith was a super cool boss, and I think Nihilith was a really creative boss, and I definitely want more bosses like Nihilith. So, even though this area, later on, I just don't think interests me enough as the other areas coming up in first, I still think this area is really fun and deserves to be on this place and this high. Are you surprised we're putting Bilewater this high? Yeah, you might be, but I think Bilewater is a legitimately a good area and not as bad as everyone says it is. Most people in the internet says this is the worst area and the area of pure pain that they're actually gonna rage quit on Silksong, and Silksong is a bad game entirely because of this area and entirely because of Grohl the Great. The fact is, if Bilewater makes you that mad over Grohl the Great and the run back, then honestly, I don't know what to say, because the run back for Grohl the Great is not even that bad. But the enemies, oh my god, the enemies are annoying. Not only did they explode, and I do like the flies, and at least there's no mosquitoes here that shoot in like rapid movements. But the ninjas, these little ninjas, they're recruited to make this entire area painful. They're so fast, have way too many health, way too many projectiles, and they pop out of nowhere. And usually it ends up, they just pop out of nowhere, they hit you with contact damage, then they hit you again with the dagger, then they run away before you can kill them, so you lose a bunch of self, gain nothing, and just lose more health, and because you're trying to run away, you probably fall in maggot water. Any area with maggot water is pure pain. I don't know why. Any area with maggot water is just gonna be a bad, painful area. Again. And then not only that, maggot, you can't heal. This area is super painful, but honestly, I think Sinner's Road is even more painful. But and one thing I like about Bilewater is how creative the enemies are. There's so many traps in this area. The amount of traps in this area is crazy. My favorite is usually the spikes that shoot out of the wall. And yeah, I just think this area is pretty cool. And I like how hard it is. And it's also where you find Chakra's master. And Chakra, okay, so Chakra has been looking for her master for the last 20 hours. And you're just constantly saying, who is Chakra's master? Because Chakra is always talking about her master as if she's kind of beast and some god that's amazing at fighting. And then you start doubting if she really exists. And then you finally find her master. Oh, out of all of the bads in Bilewater has some really cool stuff in it. And I think it deserves to be in this high. Because Bilewater is just a cool area. And I like the swamp vibe, which we never really got in Hollow Knight or earlier Silksong. So, yeah. And let's get to the next area. Greymore is awesome. I really like the platforming and the towers and the windmills. I really like those spinning wheels. And the entrance to Sinner's Road is really cool. I like that part. It's really the middle area where you sometimes go and it makes you really realize how dark Farloom is and how old it is. Another thing is, it's just really open and wide, and the violin in the background is really cool. But I think, in my opinion, the best part of Greymore is probably the crows and the birds. That section of Greymore is really cool, and when you first go through there, through Act 1, the birds are just really hard to kill and nearly impossible to fight. So you really struggle, and I like that it's not you don't need to actually fight the birds, and you could come back for later, which is really cool. Also, the Greymore boss in Act 3 of the Greymore Bird Judge, or Crowfather, I like him, and I think he's a cool boss, even though he himself is not that strong. I like how he relies on the other birds to help him, and that was super fun. Now, the platforming, the balloons make you jump really high. It's really fun, especially when you don't have a double jump, and you really have to guide yourself, and that's just awesome. So with the scenery, plus the enemies, and the cool moments, like Crowfather, combines all this, and this area just leaves its impact on the game, and it's just awesome being in Greymore. So, yeah. Choral Chamber is the place where you wanted to be in the entire Act 1, and when you finally got to Choral Chamber, it feels so good. The place looks so holy, even with all the webs. The Architect just feels like Godhome, but like a million times bigger. All the enemies are super hard, yet super fair, and truly feel like they were part of a town. You can still see that this place was a great city, and it's also where you connect to 5 other areas: Underwork, Whiteward, Clockwork Core, Library, which I forgot the name of, and High Hall, which is all areas that's really good, but this area just connects them all, and it makes this huge city that truly just feels like, it shows how grand the Citadel once was. And I love that every person that's here, or enemies that's here, has their own rank before the place fell apart. It also has its own town, which is cool. Which is the Lost Core, the town. And I like the town. Sherma became the leader of the town, which is cool. And I love the shaman when he was the king of the place. And the city has a lot of good tools and cool stuff, and there's a bunch of puzzles in this area. There's just a bunch of things to explore, just a bunch of enemies, and where basically you spend most of Act 2 in. Like, Choral Chambers was the place where you spend your entire Act 2 in, and that's really cool. And just, Choral Chamber really showed off, and it was really cool. And it's probably the place that changed the most after Act 2 and into Act 3, which is also really cool. And so, with all that combined, I think Choral Chamber deserves a number 2nd spot, and I don't think anybody would disagree at me or be mad at me. Deep Docks is in number 1st place. I just this area feels very much like Clockwork Core, but a fire vibe, and the industrial vibe is just really cool. It is where you first see the Citadel Architect and how grand this place is, and where the Citadel gets all its gold and steel. Because in the Choral Chambers, like, the giant buildings can't just be built out of just rocks. No, this is where they got all their metal, and I think they described all the industry really well. All the enemies are really cool. I love the bucket heads and every single variation about them. One of the most creepiest thing is seeing the giant guy follow us everywhere, and you probably know what I mean. And also, the platforming is really fun in this area, especially you don't have all your stuff. And in Act 2, what a great thing about this area is you return to it. You come back here in Act 2, and it expands into another huge area. So it doesn't show everything that this area has to show until much later. And it is kind of the last area, because there is also the bell, the giant bell where you have to go to the abyss. And so basically this is the last true area other than the abyss. And the abyss I put in last place, so honestly, like, obviously it's not that good. And yeah. Also, the bosses are cool, and I like the 4-brother, Gron and On. There's nothing to complain about this area. And I love the giant slugs. The giant slugs are just super cool. And yeah, this is my 1st place, and please. So, thank you for watching this far, and if you truly enjoyed this video, then please subscribe and like. I'm a very small YouTuber, and I usually just do this stuff for fun. This video is very hard to make, and I would really appreciate it, because lately I've not been posting that much because I just couldn't find enough reason to. But but please like and subscribe, and see you next time if I do next video that I make.